Hello, everyone. Blue Star Saber here with
Hey guys, it's Mangareader.
yes, and we're here to discuss the 10th anniversary of My Hero Academia, its legacy and impact. And already we have one. Let's see, if you're in the side chat. Let's see, space. Hello. Let's see who has been Let's see, really wanting to see if we would be discussing the 10th anniversary, which arguably we will. For those who do not know, the anime series, if you will, My Hero Academia, has had its 10th anniversary on, let's see, April 3rd. But of course, we were busy discussing, of course, my Naosaku top 10 moments, because Naosaku Day was on that day, if you will, and we had quite a nice long chat with chat, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah, and a lot has happened since the last stream, so yeah. But anyway, we're basically for this series, we're going to be talking about for this stream. We're basically going to be talking about My Hero Academia, the 10 years that's been on, if you will. It's a sort of history when it's arrived, its sort of impact and legacy, pop culture, both the pros and the cons that seems to have happened while My Hero Academia has run with its anime, as well as I guess some of the movies, specials it's done, and also the bonus special episode that's just come out today, I guess. And let's see, arguably concluding the series, as well as like maybe talk about some of its spin-offs. So yeah.
There's spin-offs? I mean, I know one of the obvious spin-offs, but I mean, there's other spin-offs?
Yeah, well, there's at least one spin-off, but there might be potential more. But yeah. So
Actually,
as
there is a second one, but I don't know. Is Mission really considered a spin-off to it, or is it just like a hero mission or something? Because I know there's that one. Obviously, the most obvious spin-off is, you
yeah,
know, uh,
yeah.
Vigilantes. But
Yeah, let's see. Not only did the final follow-on come out with X Chapter, the art book came out with a mini chapter, the final season, if it had been adapted and more. I think that might be the area one, but whether or not that be adapted, I'm not sure. Anyway, My Hero
art book.
Academia. Sorry, what?
I said art book. That's cool.
The art book is cool, but yeah, My Hero Academia, of course, is based off the popular manga series of by let's see, Kori Hirokoshi, if you will, which of course mangakas rarely show their faces, but yeah, a manga that came out in July, just around the time Naruto was at its end, if you will. So let's see, let's see, and we know that Shonen Jump arguably needed something to try and start replacing the big three, as they were just about to end, and My Hero Academia, let's see, they tried to do that with Boruto, I think, do it to continue on Naruto, but ironically enough, the My Hero Academia would arguably be the manga series many would say is the spiritual successor to Naruto in taking its place among the top mangas, if you will. But of course, there will be some debates on that. But arguably, My Hero Academia was arguably the first of what would be known as the late 2010s manga that would come to replace the big three, which dominated the 2000s and early 2010s, if you will. So yeah, as many popular mangas like My Hero Academia here, of course, Black Clover, let's see, Demon Slayer, let's see, Doctor Stone, Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, and I guess you could argue maybe Promise Neverland. And Boruto fans would argue Boruto, though granted I'd say its reputation is a bit let's see, more mixed, if you will. But nevertheless, many of these series were basically coming out to replace the big three, but My Hero Academia was the first. As a result, its anime came out, let's see, first in 2016, ironically enough, just when the anime for Naruto Shippuden sort of ended up, let's see, closing because Studio Period decided to just continue it on with like amounts of filler, starting adapting the novels, you know, all that kind of stuff. They seem to like wanted to get up to like 500 episodes and end it with like the Hinata wedding, which you and I both dislike, of course, but that is Itsy, but that's in here or there. But ironically enough, just as Naruto's ending, My Hero Academia Ritzy started, though granted you also had Boruto's anime continuing there, though granted it ended up being a bit its own sort of filler, if you will. It wasn't really starting with the manga because that was monthly. So but yeah, and as Space says, yep, My Hero, JJ, Black Clover, Chainsaw Man, and DC, and Attack on Titan, though arguably Attack on... Let's see, crazy that all these series has ended too, yes, and My Hero Academia, Black Clover's manga has just recently ended. As a result, let's see, with this anime episode, you could really tell that it's sort of the end of an era, if you will, as all the late 2000 mangas have sort of, you know, ended, if you will. And now you've got like many of the new mangas from the 2010 that are just slowly taking its place, such as Dandadan. I think that one with swords, Kurabachi or something, and Gachamo. I can't pronounce it, but yeah, you got a bunch of new animes coming to replace those, but only really like Hunter x Hunter and One Piece from like the time of the big three still ongoing. I guess you could argue maybe Boruto, but that's a sequel spin-off, really.
And not in like the standard shonen anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, more like the late 2000s to 2010. So yeah, the early 2010, yeah, so arguably we're at the end of an era and the beginning of a new one, it seems, if you will, for most anime. But yeah, but basically, My Hero Academia started off with like 2016, and it started off with, of course, 13 episodes covering its sort of introduction to the UAG school arc, where the League of Villains first invaded, like My Hero Ritzy first invaded the school, if you will, climaxing in that Ritzy final battle between All Might versus like the most recognized Nomu, I think, in the series, if you will. And so the first season was like 13. Arguably, the series was like popular enough, but I would say it didn't quite reach the level of popularity until like its second season, when it did, of course, the sports festival and like and arcs like the Stain arc, as well as like the exam, sort of like the school exam arc, where you have like Midoriya and Bakugo teaming up against All Might, if you will. So but yeah, I think that second season was where it peaks, but after like that first season and started to peak in popularity and draw everyone's attention. But first season was like 13 episodes, and then for the next couple of seasons, at least the next 5, they would try and do the standard 25 episodes a season. And then, of course, 21 episodes for season 7 and 11 episodes for season 8, as those were like a batch of like the last couple of episodes. But in many ways, that sort of, I think, shown for like perhaps one of the impacts that My Hero Academia as anime had on the anime manga community, because I think both of you and I know when it came to anime beforehand, most of it would either just be nothing but weekly anime. So like you always have anime coming out, an episode of a series once a week. Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, for example, they all had episodes coming out each week when they were sort of like ongoing. And as a result, let's see, to make sure that they wouldn't get caught up with, well, say the sort of manga, if you will, they would often do filler, if you will. Naruto, he would either do, either like a long span of filler arcs or mini filler arcs, if you will. Bleach would like do filler arcs that would be separate and don't really match with the timeline of like the manga events, if you will. Particularly between like in the Iranka saga, if you will. And One Piece would do like the sort of slow pacing of one chapter for one episode, or sometimes even half a chapter for half episode, which, depending on which fan you ask, depending on which you ask, each say one of their fillers is worse than the other. Bleach would say like long ones like the Bout arc are like terrible. Naruto, everyone says that most of its filler is unwatchable. And some people would argue that One Piece is like padding out, which sometimes ruins certain arcs like Dressrosa, if you will. Though later seasons like Wano, some would say it sort of made it better, if you will. Some would even say Wano's anime is better than the manga. So, but yeah, you've had like all these sort of like basically, and I think when you don't count like ritzy anime that weren't the big three, most of them like would do like weekly, but some of them that ritzy might be monthly or something like that. Like Shaman King, well, not Shaman King's not really monthly, but Full Metal Alchemist, Soul Eater, mangas that are monthly, they would get weekly anime, but of course they're still ongoing, so they would either have to do their own original endings. Some would be well received, or some would be more rather mixed. So that's always been a sort of like a problem, I would say, weekly, if you will. And as a result, there's also like some anime that only get one season and never get an adaptation, never get like a continuation with like a second season, if you will, for one reason or another. But yeah, that was just generally like anime before. Now, granted, Attack on Titan in 2013, arguably, you could argue it's the one manga that or anime series that sort of came out that before like all of the 2010s, though. The manga I think came out in, was it 2010, 2011, maybe 2009. Its anime came out in 2013. It had one season, but it had a very long absence before like you get the second season. But My Hero Academia arguably became the sort of first anime to do like what would most cartoons in the West would do, and do like a standard either 13 or 26 or 25 episode season. Wait a bit for like a year before doing another one, if you will. So arguably it sort of maybe in some ways you could argue My Hero Academia paved the way for like most studios to realize they don't need to keep doing episodes on all the time. They can do perhaps seasonal, if you will. I'm not sure if you want to have some thoughts about that.
What?
I know. Do you think that when My Hero Academia's anime first came about, the seasonal anime started becoming more a thing? That's basically what I'm asking.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and Space is Bitsy comments here say season 1 to 3 act 1, season 4 first half of season 6 act 2, and the second half of season 6 to season 8 act 3. Yeah, arguably that is true. Let's see, you had like the UA beginning saga. I think I'm always forgetting the Dwitzy second saga's name, if you will. Hold on. My Hero Academia sagas. Let me just story arc. Oh yeah, the UA beginning saga. The final exams. Nope. Hero Killer. Remember the court. Wait, Pro Hero. Oh yeah, the Rise of the Villain saga, and of course the final act saga. So yeah, My Hero Academia is explained to like 3 separate ones. And here we go. For the anime, My Hero only did anime canon episodes, or episodes that were meant to be tied into the film. So yeah, and of course recaps episodes. So yeah, My Hero Academia rarely did any filler, if you will. Mostly episodes that would tie into the movies, which would help you give you an idea of when those movies may have taken place within the My Hero Academia timeline, because the movies are technically canon, if you will, which we're going to get to in a bit. But yeah, My Hero Academia did rarely any filler, so it showed, in a sense, this is another thing that sort of anime sort of helped do. It showed that you didn't need to do filler like half the time just before keeping up with the manga. And as a result, you've got these days you've got a lot less filler arcs in like anime. Though some would argue that some animes or stories might do well with a few filler arcs in between, but arguably most series would avoid like doing like the standard Naruto / Boruto filler arcs, which for some people felt like they just messed with the timeline of the series or just added little bits that just kind of made the series worse, if you will, because Studio Period has a habit of making all its content canon, even when it contradicts stuff, if you will, or doesn't make sense in the timeline. So that is one thing that that the anime had sort of a negative impact, if you will. Let's see, filler can do, but with My Academia, not only do you not have to worry about filler, as a result, you have a lot less episodes. And even though it does have like a total of 170 episodes, a special episode and like 10 OVAs and 4 movies, some would probably say it's a lot more digestible than, say, like a 700 episode series of like two separate parts, or the 1,000 episodes for One Piece. Though COVID did end up making it easier for some people to catch up to One Piece, from my understanding, but still, it's arguably why you have the live action and the upcoming the One Piece reboot, so to make it a bit more accessible. But yeah, and Space Ghost like, yeah, my wouldn't have benefited from being weekly anime, especially when the anime catches up to the manga. The anime was made when Horikoshi was doing the Stain arc. Yeah, arguably, the anime came quite quickly for like quite quickly, if you will, and yeah, Act 1 ended after All Might retired, which arguably it was like a bit. It's interesting how quickly the first. Let's see, My Hero Academia was also sort of like the first manga, if you will, to kind of show that the new generations are a bit faster in getting to like the first big event than, say, like Naruto, Bleach, or One Piece. As Part 1 lasted over 200 chapters. Bleach didn't have its first time skip until like 300. Let's see, 48 volumes, if you will, and One Piece were like nearly 600 chapters. But yeah, and another comment here saying there's a reason why fans make a difference between filler and anime canon, because some anime canon are actually connected to the main plot, like Bleach's Bout arc. Arguably, yes. Some fillers would end up tying so well into like its canon stories that that you couldn't really ignore it, if you will. And the Bout arc is arguably one of the most infamous because, well, let's see, it's for many people it's not a very good arc, but at the same time there's a lot of canon stuff that ties in between it, if you will. And I'd even say some of Naruto's filler kind of got caught in between its sort of like episodes, though. For example, when, let's see, from like the Pain arc to the Kage Summer arc, if you will, when they're having those Kohona memory flashbacks episodes, you will, some of the events such as Danzo being made Hokage tied in with some episodes that they were having flashbacks to, and the one in particular, Danzo, I think, was a bit of a problem because that one did a filler flashback that sort of retconned episode 3 because you had Naruto fighting Sasuke after the whole bench scene when now Sasuke's supposed to encounter Naruto just as he got off the toilet, if you will. So I see Mangareader was absent for a bit, and sorry, Mangareader, I didn't realize that you had come off the stream for a bit. Apologies there. Are you okay? Hello? Okay, I'm just gonna wait a while for like Mangareader to respond and as I go on, but yeah, but My Hero Academia with the lack of filler allowed it to just keep the manga story. The only time I think you could say it added filler was, I believe, in season 3, part 2, if you will, I believe the hero license arc, the provisional license hero arc, where I think some members of Class A ended up battling some other students from another class who seem to be just to expand how they got through to the exams, if you will. Other than that, most of like as Space has said, here is let's see hold on, let me saying for the anime yeah, they only did like tie-ins to like the movies, if you will, or maybe like the occasional recap. So yeah. So we have that. I've got another comment from Space. Later in the stream, might talk about how My Hero Academia is to take big two of comics, Marvel and DC. Oh yeah, arguably it did get a lot of inspiration. In some ways, My Hero Academia's popularity came out at the right time, if you will, because during, like, of course, the 2010s, superhero movies were sort of dominating the let's see, the popular culture. Mangareader, is that you?
Yes, that's me.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were off for a bit, but
No,
yeah.
my mic got kind of screwed up there for a second there, so
Okay,
I'm all good now.
all right. Do you want to let's see any thoughts on like let's see how My Hero Academia may have shown that you don't need to do fillers every week or something, or I don't know, or do you want to just get on to the next bit I was going to talk about, or
I don't know. Fillers serve a double purpose, but I mean, what was it? I mean, I think they were the type that actually waited like what every 6 months practically, so felt like it, or at least a year for Koei to catch up. But actually, I wonder how far they got before they even started making their anime, because by that point, Koei probably could have just kept a.
I believe Space says, let's see from this comment here, says the anime was being made when Hirokoshi was doing the Stain arc. So that first.
So yeah, they were pretty far ahead, more or less. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, filler's kind of cool because I think there was like maybe one filler episode per season or something like that.
Yeah, and they're usually tie-ins to the movies, or at least just like an events that happen just before.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there was the swimming pool one, which didn't happen in the manga.
Yeah. That was sort of a recap one. I think that was the one recap it did, which
I think they had another recap one, which was a guy interviewing them. But regardless, you're right. Most of the filler tended to be
I think that was one of
of sorts.
I think that was one of the OVA specials, if you will.
It could have been that too then.
Yeah.
I don't care in that respect, but
I will say for like filler, some I think did help maybe the anime to some extent, such as I actually kind of like the 12 Ninja Guardian one from Naruto Shippuden, where it sort of expanded on what the group of the 12 Ninja Guardian was. As a result, you kind of cared for like Asuma when he wanted to avenge his comrade that was killed by Hiden and Kakuzu in the next arc, because, well, you learn that they are the only two survivors of the group after there was like a civil war about how the land of fire should only have one king, and let's see, trying to with one group wanting the Hokage gone, while the other like stayed loyal to Daimyo. That kind of and the Hokage, if you will. So that kind of do, and I also think it allowed Team Yamato to go on one more mission. As I do feel like Kishimoto sort of neglected Team Yamato in the but yeah. So heck, and Sakura even got like a fight, if you will.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Shippuden had more filler spread throughout the actual season than Naruto obviously did. But
Naruto just did all its towards the
end to wait for Kishimoto to start part 2. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. My Hero Academia filler isn't terrible, but I mean, there's so far in between that I don't really mind that they didn't have it in the first place.
Yeah. So but yeah, in many ways, I would say My Hero Academia may have been the beginning of end of most fillers. Not saying that it completely died out, because you had Boruto.
Doesn't One Piece still kind of do it here and there?
it's sort of padded out its episodes, and it did do filler, and it did do a few occasional filler episodes, but there was like very many small arcs or tie-ins to like movies, if you will. But now it's seasonal as well. So yeah, in a sense, filler sort of dying unless you count maybe like kids' weekly anime like Pokemon, if you will. That night, because
yeah, I don't know any other really weeklies at this point.
Yeah, I think but Pokemon's the only one I can think of, really.
Although, in fairness, I mean, it hasn't really done anything, so I don't even know if a filler even counts in whatever it is nowadays.
Yeah, so it goes for Pokemon. It allows you to just give an episode exploring an individual Pokemon or a gym battle, one of game characters, if you will, or even one of its own original storylines. But
well, I'm just saying that now that it's not it didn't follow Ash, and thus it didn't really follow the games itself. It kind of was its own thing to begin with.
Yeah, but yeah. So but yeah. Anyway, yeah, filler nowadays is only anime canon or recap episodes. That is true. So
I feel like that's always been the case, but yeah.
No, no, I do. Like I said, I think Perry did a lot that contradicted a lot of sometimes the manga stories with their ones. But yeah, so you had like all these episodes. Of course, you also had a lot of specials for My OVAs, if you will, for My Hero Academia. Like this, like the first one was a rescue training where the class 1A ended up fighting All Might, but they didn't realize it at the end. You had the zombie one, I believe. That was a classic. Let's see, and you also had like one I think was loosely adapted of like a mini manga of All Might Rising of like that ties into like the first My Hero Academia movie, and I think you've got like a Make It Do It Dire Survival Training, a two-parter where they're sort of like as I was just like sort of like preparing them for like a hero license exams. And you've got one that's for the World Heroes mission, the departure, if you will. That was also one. Mostly, many of these were loose, either original storylines or adapted for like manga one-shot tie-ins, if you will. There's one about the baseball, if you will, and baseball game, and apparently this one about Mr. Smiley. That's an original one, I believe. I think there's also one of a card game, if you will. I think this one here, and this one here is, I think, and then one, of course, like Piece of Cake one that's loosely debuted in a tie-in for like Your Next. So you got a few specials, and I think you're right. There was like another one. I think was like was it maybe season 2 or at least somewhere in season 2? I think there was that one with like the photographer journalist. Let's see, and Space saying, yep, very important OVA 2, for example, All Might Rising, which is a tie into the first film. Most OVA were pretty much fillers of My Hero, funny enough. So yeah, arguably, if you got like filler storylines, it would be like it would be their own original stories or things that tie into canon. Now, granted, I think the first My Hero OVA, if you will, the zombie one, did sort of tie into the somewhat of the manga, at least a little backstory to like Froppy with like this lizard friend that she had, which and I don't recall if it was like in the bonus material or in the manga itself, but let's see, Froppy did have this sort of like lizard friend that was like sort of intimidated anyone, but she was like a friend with. But of course, the main part of that was like this one dude who was like basically had a quirk that turned everyone into zombies, who basically had the same personality as Bakugo, if you will, but which was actually kind of funny, if you will. But yeah, most of the OVAs were like but yeah. But in some ways, I think one thing that helped My Hero Academia's popularity is the fact that, well, it came out in the time of the 2010s, which it was like basically the sort of superhero movies were dominating, the sort of like the mainstream media, if you will, with like particularly the MCU with its movies, such as the Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy. All those movies sort of made, heroes extremely popular. You also had other stuff like the Dark Knight trilogy. Some movies in the DC extended universe were popular, but others were not so, and some were divisive, despite the fact that our friend, James likes Man of Steel. That was a divisive movie, but nevertheless, superhero movies were basically popular, and you had two mangas that came out at the time that basically were based on superheroes: My Hero Academia and One Punch Man. With One Punch Man came out in the 2010, so yeah, it was the superhero era. So yeah, My Hero Academia both representing, I know, different sort of like worlds of heroes, if you will. My Hero was more of your traditional comic. One Punch Man was more of your superhero genre with like tropes of the shonen manga, and which it parried a bit with like such as complicated villain backstories, transformations, and just the main character just being not caring so much because he's just so overpowered. He's just looking for a thrill of a fight, if you will. But arguably, My Hero Academia's anime probably remains the more popular, despite the fact maybe the first season of One Punch Man perhaps being more popular than the first season of My Hero Academia because it was done by Madhouse. But since then, the anime seasons for One Punch Man have gotten worse over time. Well, for the most part,
well, James would not be thrilled to hear any of this.
Yeah, but particularly season 3 got a bad reputation for One Punch Man. But My Hero Academia's anime seasons arguably remain consistent for the most part. But yeah.
Consistency.
Yeah. As Space, there's a kind of few My Hero Academia as a modern era of comics after Golden, Silver, and Bronze eras of comics, which kind of the names of All Might's hero suits. Arguably, yes. Anyways, My Hero Academia is a sort of blend of like most of like the superheroes of like probably some of the comics of the modern era. It is known that Hirokoshi is a huge fan of characters like Spider-Man, if you will, and which some say Deku sort of mirrors Spider-Man in a few ways, but particularly when he gets like the Black Whip quirk, if you will. But yeah. So arguably, yeah, it got a lot of inspiration from comics and came out at that time, so it did quite well, I'd say. In terms of that, and All Might is pretty much Captain America and Superman of My Hero Academia. Arguably, yes. So let's see. So you got like your inspirations there, if you will, and arguably the comic book storylines might have even influenced certain storylines in My Hero Academia, such as the paranormal. Let's see, quirk users basically being sort of like X-Men and mutants, if you will, for the prejudice, if you will, and stuff like that. Either you could say maybe might have been loosely inspired by heroes like the Flash or Quicksilver. Let's see, you can even argue that maybe the Endeavor, let's see, and the Todoroki family drama maybe even inspired by some of the more soap opera elements that you sometimes got in Marvel comics. Let's see. I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps, Hirokoshi got inspired by the sort of, infamous moment of Ant-Man / Yellow Jacket, Hank Pym slapping Jeanette Denvine, aka the Wasp, if you will. I wouldn't be surprised if that storyline may have inspired the Todoroki family drama, if you will. So, but yeah, but who knows? Of course, My Hero Academia also sort of married a lot of tropes from, like, of course, shonen manga, if you will. Let's see, and it's saying it's pretty funny because All Might was the Superman clone that was good person, while the time was trying to turn Superman negative. arguably, yes. So, All Might, in some ways, is perhaps the closest, let's see, legacy or homage of like Superman that's actually sort of like like continues like the positive legacy, because usually when you get like common, let's see, Superman counterparts in other series, they're usually like a dark reflection or commentary, like Omni-Man, Homelander, I think even the Sentry from Marvel, if you will, all sort of like Superman rip-offs or homages, if you will, but more of a darker blend. Heck, even DC did like Injustice, where it's with that Superman being evil, if you will. But
Another James fan.
Sorry, what?
Said another James favorite.
Oh yeah, but so yeah, you kind of like you always did like the evil Superman, but All Might was arguably the equivalent of good. Now, arguably, Hero didn't really do like any of like you could argue didn't really do Superman's arch enemies for All Might, because well, you could argue maybe All for One. It might be somewhat of like a powered up Lex Luthor, if you would, but yeah. But yeah, I think it was more of, let's see, the heroes that Corey most inspired. There's like maybe the X-Men, but of course there was also like your standard shonen tropes. Let's see, the Dark Hero arc, in my opinion, was like a fusion of Black Suit Spider-Man saga and the Batman Nightfall storyline. Arguably, yeah, but we'll get more to that in a bit. But I definitely say, let's see, My Hero Academia was more of a more optimistic, let's see, setting, if you will, for like superheroes. Arguably, you could say for most of its first saga, it kind of would see it would be like if the Silver Age of superheroes prospered into like a bit of a thing with like the Bronze Age being, let's see, gone, if you will, before somewhat coming in, if you will, down the line for like comics, if you will. But what was I going to say? I don't know. Just see, is there anything you want to comment about? Let's see the superhero inspirations for My Hero before I talk about some of the tropes that it did for like other shonen, if you will.
I mean, let's see. Obviously, the biggest proponent to whatever this hero society, and I covered this like multiple times whenever we actually discussed the comic when it was ongoing, manga ongoing, whatever you want, was that it's pretty wild that in a society with superpowers that you need a a license to do any type of superheroing under most circumstances.
Yeah, arguably, you don't really have hero licensing in Marvel. When they did that, it led to like the Civil War storyline, which
So it's the Superhero Registration Act, where
yeah,
the superheroes had to. That was what it was all about, registering mutants originally, and then they, when they did Civil War, they made it to just be all superheroes because big event happens. If you don't know that, I'm pretty sure Space does at this point because he's the only one really looking at this. But if anyone were to stumble upon this, no, the movie is not exactly 100% like what the comic was. So if you're interested, read that comic. It's actually not necessarily too bad, but it's also kind of a really big hate message to Iron Man fans. So.
Well, it arguably split the Marvel fan base, if you will, because let's see, the side that won felt like the bad guy side, and many people ended up hating Iron Man. It wasn't until like the movies that Iron Man sort of got a redemption, if you will. So,
well, yeah, it was Robert Downey Jr. basically changed everyone's impressions of Iron Man, but the comics never did anything of value to up to that point to make Tony anything of a likable person.
Oh yeah, and basically every writer, if they got the chance, would have either Iron Man wrong or beat up. For example, Hulk in World War Hulk would beat the living daylights out of him, and Thor would definitely kick his butt, especially when he found out that Iron Man cloned him and it killed one of the heroes on the other side, if you will. So
yes,
that's examples. And answer Bearer now waste. It's just an open panel. Yeah, you're free to do as any comment as you like, and we will answer if you will, as
I don't know
much
if
as
an
we would
open panel in the way that they think, but yes, like he said, anything that you ask, we'll talk about. So
yeah, and it sometimes would be helpful discussion. He says, I can't believe that Act One is like the Bronze Age until All Might retired, and then became the modern era. In some regards, I suppose you could say it sort of started off Silver Age, then kind of came Bronze Age, and then kind of came modern era. Like you could even argue with the whole Dark Deku stuff that could have been a homage to the Dark Age, if you will, in some regards, where everything became sort of gritty. But we'll get more into that later. One thing I'll also probably say is that the anime also probably also had an impact maybe on movies, if you will. Now, granted, the movies, it did at least like 4 movies for like My Hero Academia that have come out. I think there's supposed to be a 5th one because I think there's supposed to be one after the result of like the world popularity poll. 2 Heroes, Heroes Rising, World Hero Mission, and You're Next. They take place throughout certain parts of the seasons, and they're both canon to the anime and the manga. But let's see, you get the anime is where you get the tie-ins to them, really. But at least for the filler, like filler ones. But of course, there's also manga tie-ins. But these movies, now as we know, during like the Big Three era, they would do movies usually once every few years or once a year, if you will. Granted, those movies, for the most part, would end up not really being canon, or maybe canon for their anime timelines at best. But they weren't really canon. But My Hero Academia was the first ones to do like original stories that tied it into like
you could fit it anyway.
Yeah, you could fit it in. Let's see, at the Naruto movies, you couldn't really do that, and sometimes they would contradict what was happening in the series at the time. Blood Prison and Road to Ninja, in particular, what I think was, and even though I like Road to Ninja, there was some stuff that contradicts what should have been there at the time or not. But
yeah, I know Blood Prison's absolutely the one that has no means of fitting. So
yeah, even though I think one of the novels after the ending tried to fit it in, and it's like I don't think it works. Let's see, and the My Hero Academia movies all canon to the manga and anime. The manga even references them like All Might's buddies, Nine, and the movie characters themselves, for example. Yeah. But in many ways, the movies, in a sense, I think one thing that did benefit the movies is that they allowed for you to sort of explore the world of My Hero Academia a bit and do some ideas that the manga never really could or never really never did the chance of doing given its story. For example, like the first one, it's the 2 Heroes. You kind of get a bit of like see a little bit of All Might's time in America and how his sort of like hero get up is sort of inspired by America, if you will, because he was there for a bit. But also, it's a movie where you get to actually see All Might and Midoriya team up because, well, by the time of the end of the first saga, All Might would have lost his quirk, and as a result, he became a non-fighter for the majority of the series. So that sort of was like the reason you could watch 2 Heroes, just to see All Might and Midoriya team up. Heroes Rising, in a sense, kind of gave a sort of, let's see, maybe a sort of prototype of what Shigaraki would become with 9, if you will, but also gave you the idea of what if Midoriya transferred one for all, if you will, to like Bakugo, and they sort of teamed up, if you will, with like this quirk. But of course, they had to make it so that Bakugo wasn't permanently having the quirk because, well, let's see, we wouldn't have a story if Midoriya no longer had, all for one. I mean, one for all, if you will. The third one, arguably, I'd say perhaps maybe the least important of the movies, sort of showed you what would it be like if like UA students traveled internationally, if you will. and see other countries. Though I think it did this one original country in Europe, if you will, but also and see a bunch of other world heroes, but those are more like cameos. So, but mostly it was like a Midoriya, Bakugo, and Shelter movie, if you will. But they also sort of gave us a sort of like a villain organization of mostly non-quirk users, but it did, of course, had quirk users in it, but they were trying to erase quirks. Sort of like building up to like this mad scientist, Dr. Giruki, who was arguably one of the most controversial aspects, given the fact that he might have been named after some sort of Japan concentration camp in World War II in China, which I think nearly got My Hero Academia banned in China as a result of that or something. Which, let's see, because of Japan and China have a bit of a history, as you know. Let's see. And of course, your next would have been like, what if Midoriya faced an evil All Might, if you will? No, not necessarily like All Might going evil, but someone that was trying to be a dark version of him, if you will. So that is what they kind of did. We've got some comments from Space here saying the movies impacted the manga, for example. Movie 2 used the original ending. Arguably, yes. That was apparently what he was trying to do, but it seems like he decided to do an entirely different ending, of course. Whether or not you think, let's see, My Hero should have stuck with its original plans for his ending or what it did, I think could be a debate for another time. And movie 3 was the most wasted potential and also kind of odd because against the Doomsday Theory. Meanwhile, the main series tried to support the theory. Arguably, yes. I don't think Hiro Kore let's see, fully decided on like let's see what to do with that theory, which arguably that was probably one of the few things that My Hero Academia hasn't really addressed of like how to prevent that sort of like scenario from happening. But I think that's going to be a bit of a talk down the line. But anyway, you want to add some thoughts on the movies, Mangareader? I'm just going to get see what film
mind you, I this was another discussion we've had over the years on that, but it's always funny to me that the first one's called Two Heroes and the next one's Heroes Rising, when reality, if they would have flip-flopped them, it might have made more sense for the movie titles. But I guess to address the elephant in the room, obviously the third movie probably felt a little less spectacular because originally we were only supposed to have two movies, and then I guess popular demand ended up coming into play, and we ended up getting a third movie, and then we got a fourth movie on top of it. Still actually haven't seen that fourth movie, unfortunately.
I believe it's both out on Crunchyroll and Netflix, so there's a chance for you to see it if you have time.
I have it on bookmark on Crunchyroll. I just every time I have the opportunity, I just have not watched it. Not because I don't want to, just because I just forget about it and then don't end up I haven't really been watching a lot. Today was actually the first time I finally started watching something on Crunchyroll again. So congrats to that, I guess. I don't know. First one's actually, I think the second movie is what most people still think is the more enjoyable movie altogether, just because it put more emphasis on the Class 1A than just kind of doing Deku, Bakugo, and some random guys in the first movie. Even though, again, Deku and Bakugo kind of just overtook the movie in movie 2 and then Shotaro. Shotaro also still had his,
And the third movie basically just solidified Midoriya, Bakugo, and Shotaro is getting the spotlight.
Like, anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those three have always kind of been destined to be the spotlight hoggers, but
Yeah. But yeah. And let's see, My Hero Academia for the Doomsday Theory pretty much goes, let's not do it, since there was no way to erase all quirks, especially with the series trying to say that quirks are part of humanity. Arguably, yes. But arguably, Right, let's see. They haven't. Let's see. That was basically it. But the movies continue to give the trend of giving the main character an amazing movie character that causes the fans to ship them together. Oh yeah. Well, at least the first one with Malicious Shield. Let's see. So that was arguably one who, because she was quirkless like Midoriya. So you have that kind of connection. Granted, the second movie not so much because the two characters were little children, and I think and the obvious reasons for why no ships there. And arguably, the next two movies, I think you had a potential yaoi partner for Midoriya. So, but yeah, if you wanted to go there, though, granted, the fourth movie I think implied that the two original characters for that were kind of a couple or wanted to be a couple. But yeah. So, but I suppose the whole Doomsday and sort of quirk thing, while arguably the movies had, for the most part, some positive impact, there was one negative impact that the third movie kind of did, which was swap around two arcs for like season 5. The school sort of the joint class battle exams, if you will, where you had class 1A and 1B fighting each other. But that was the first half. Arguably, probably one of the most controversial arcs in the series. But it's more of the two arcs that come after, which the My Villain Academia arc, if you will, or the Meta Liberation Army, and the Endeavor Agency arc. They in the anime they swapped them around, and it feels like the anime did this because the movie was coming out in the early second half, so they wanted to have that anime tie-in with the movie, if you will. So you kind of got like certain characters appearing, let's see, that you didn't quite understand the full context until like the next season. And there's even some stuff that was cut out for season 5 that should have been in season 5 that only came in season 6, such as like I think it was Spinner questioning, let's see, what Shigaraki wanted to do, if you will. So you kind of had stuff like that. Let's see, it sort of had a bit of a negative impact. Granted, season 5 was always going to be controversial because it had the joint class exams arc, if you will, which the 6 quirk thing divided the fan base in the manga and may have done so in the anime, I think, as well. With Space saying, yeah, the second half of season 5 is the only season I believe that wasn't a good adaptation. It's just like, I feel like they wanted the movie tied into season 5 that should have been the My Villain Academia film like Demon Slayer did. Arguably, arguably you could have perhaps maybe have done the League of Villains having their own movie, but you maybe could have done that. I think there's enough arc and episodes to do it. Arguably, you could argue that half of My Hero Academia's anime arcs could be adapted into movies, like the Villain Hideout Raid arc. I think that could have been a movie if you wanted to have like All Might and All for One on the big screen. But yeah, though arguably My Hero Academia would be one of the few animes that would do original stories. But then of course you still get them, of course, but afterwards, Demon Slayer, JJK would do movies, and even Chainsaw Man would do movies based on manga canon storylines, such as the Mugen Train, Jujutsu Kaisen 0, and the Riz arc for Chainsaw Man, if you will. My Hero Academia was one of the ones that sort of did what Naruto did, but actually make it sort of fit in with the manga, if you will. And of course, you got like cameos later down the line for like or references from those movies in the manga, such as All Might saying, "I had a friend that designed like his battle suit," and everyone thinking like, "Oh, this is Melissa's shield," even if it's not outright stated. And you then had like many of the movie characters watch the final battle in the series, so there was also that. But I suppose, well, arguably, My Hero Academia, for the most part, remained popular. I do think there was certain periods where the anime, of course, season 5 kind of declined a little bit of its popularity, but I think there's also the fact that some of the other shonen mangas were coming in, and and they were kind of like darker, and in some regards, you could argue had better animation. But I think there was more of a long gap between them. Like, I think Demon Slayer, for example, might have been one. Granted, Demon Slayer's first season came out just when it was wrapping up in the manga. So, but yeah, but certain animes like Demon Slayer and JJK would not necessarily do one season a year. They would do sometimes 2 years, maybe even 3, if you will. But yeah. So and arguably they had a bit more dark animation. And oh yeah, remember the Dark Trio? What nonsense! Ah yes, let's see. During the fact that there's many different series, Black Clover, arguably the only anime from like the newer generation that did weekly anime before it had to put on hiatus. Although, granted, now that the manga's ended, they'll probably have its anime returning. So, but yeah, arguably shonen, and perhaps you could even argue Japan and maybe some to extent Western society's culture became a bit more of the dark, depressing. You kind of had like series like Demon Slayer, Chainsaw Man, and Jujutsu Kaisen that had very dark setting worlds. Characters with like brutal deaths, or characters that had to go through like despair moments. And like JJ always had gaps in its seasons, like 2 to 3 years. Yeah, arguably that is probably the best example. Demon Slayer was a bit of a mix. And Chainsaw Man, arguably, is probably similar to JJK in that regards. But as a result, some people felt maybe My Hero Academia was being too light. But arguably, that's probably why some interest came back with My Hero Academia when its war arc happened. And then, of course, you had the... to be honest, JJK and Demon Slayer weren't really that dark. Arguably, no. In some ways, Demon Slayer has its main characters kind of similar to Midoriya, and there is some optimism, but I do think it does have some very brutal deaths. And arguably the first season of JJK was quite light, though granted, the second season arguably is where I think it gets its reputation for being a dark series. But arguably, My Hero Academia was more on the optimism side of shonen. And let's see, the Dark Hero Deku arc sort of made it more of like, for a brief moment, having the dark period, which got people interested in. But arguably, My Hero Academia remained of more of a light-hearted series. I know. What do you think? Because there was like a period of decline, particularly season 5 before season 6. I think maybe restored its reputation a bit. You there, Mangareader?
What? I didn't. I mean, I haven't really kept up with Demon Slayer or JJK, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Let's see, but yeah, let's see. I was talking about My Hero Academia came out of a light-hearted series, but then of course you've got a bunch of dark shonen mangas coming out at the time. Some would say Demon Slayer, some would say JJK, some would say Attack on Titan.
Well, that was space, but yeah.
As a result, some felt like My Hero was just a bit too light or campy. I think certain arcs, like of course the UA festival arc, cultural festival arc, would be an example of that. But then it had like the Dark Deku arc, and interesting space things. Funny enough, the Dark Hero arc was kind of a rejection of dark anime. So I don't know. What do you make of this?
I mean, it started fairly lighthearted, but I mean, as it went on, it kind of flipped the script and became. I mean, I wouldn't say it got darker as it went on, but it did get a little more violent than what you anticipated, given on how it started for My Hero Academia. I guess with One for All kind of becoming like I mean, he was always going to be the massive threat, but with him and Shigaraki really getting really knees deep into it, I guess it got a little darker than anticipated compared to what it was.
Oh yeah, because arguably early My Hero Academia, you rarely had
There was nothing. I mean, no one really anticipated that it was going to be like a pretty violent showing in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, that was interesting to say the least. But I mean, I kind of was having this talk with a coworker. My coworker was like, compared to what it was, how it ended is completely different from when you like. If you go back and watch the first episode and then kind of watch or at least the first season, and then you watch the last season, it'd be like two different shows altogether.
Okay.
At least that's how I saw it. I mean, it started way different than how it ended.
Okay. Spaces. I think fans make mistake what Dark really is because what JC Cars does wasn't any different from what the Big Three and My Hero Academia did. Oh yeah, one thing I think we forgot to mention is that My Hero Academia also did a few tropes that, let's see, you expect in shonen, such as the love interest and the rival, if you will. Though many thought Bakugo was going down the Sasuke path, if you will, but turns out he sort of rejected that. And in some ways, Bakugo kind of mirrors someone like the shonen protagonist with their hot-headedness and charging straight into battle, if you will. So arguably it did that. Ochoko was arguably one of the few, let's see, love interests that I guess you could argue maybe someone say Hinata, though I would say Sakura was Hinata's love interest for the majority of the series, but didn't have any tsundere traits, if you will. But also, I think it made it straight. It was one of those like mon shonen that made it straight and clear that Midori and Uraraka were going to get together. So I think you had that. So of course you had you do have some of the other standard tropes, such as Shoto having like the sort of family drama, if you will, and arguably, one thing that My Hero Academia arguably did with Midoriya is that he's probably one of the first shonen protagonists that did not have a powerful father, because every one of the Big Three did that. And we know that one criticism that, particularly the Big Three had is that, the main characters, despite supposed to being, what appeared to be starting out as underdogs or ordinary people, ended up being special chosen one figures down the line. But Midoriya, he sort of just he was born quirkless. His father was no one special. He never even showed up. But he just happened to just luckily run into like the number one hero and sort of was given a chance to become hero with his powers. But instead, it's arguably maybe sticking with the trope of like the main character having like a special power, but he definitely had to work his butt off to actually, use it, if you will. So, but nevertheless, Midori was perhaps one of the first shonen protagonists to like not have like a bloodline in quite a while, if you will.
Well, I mean, what? Because we had. I know this is a rather obscure anime that most people probably wouldn't know, but I'm trying to think. Because what I'm about to say is, I don't really think Zatchbell really had any big on, or Yu-Gi-Oh! For that matter.
But Yugi himself was a regular person, but he was connected with like Yami, but that was...
Yeah, but I don't even know if the Pharaoh... Well, regardless. I mean, that was just a Millennium item type situation, but
The only manga I can think that the main character didn't have any special connections with anyone before was, this one might be a bit obscure, was Kenshi the Mightiest Disciple. Let's see.
That's there. What? The other one was... Oh, crap, I forgot the name of it. I know what it is, but I forgot the name of it. Oh, well. I think that was just. I think that one was just because they were already.
But yeah,
Nah, it don't matter.
but yeah,
I don't know if it really if it really matters who has what. Dragon Ball fans would argue Bardock was no one special. I mean, he's stronger than anyone that was in Dragon Ball, but it was regarded as one of the weaker beings of his race. So,
well, yeah. Though, granted, I think what some would say, Goku went from being like a human to a Super Saiyan, kind of Ritzy prevented him from being an ordinary person, if you will, even though he had a monkey tail. But yeah, let's see.
Journey to the West. All I can tell you.
Yeah. Space says, wasn't it like Noah beat Aozai down badly and Shigaraki nearly killed Tsuyu and Mineta, or was or what the Noma actually are, or was Ender of a flashback or technical flashback? He already has had dark stuff. Arguably, yes, though. I definitely remember, like, for its first saga, it only had like 4 characters I knew that sort of died or were said to be dead because I even compared it to like Assassination Classroom where only 4 characters were dead. But or listed as dead because that series, despite being about assassins, was actually quite lighthearted.
Well, no one really didn't beat it down that badly.
Yeah, but Space says, I would rather say Izuku was an average person, no connection to anything until the day he met All Might. So arguably, yes. Let's see. And he goes like, even more shonen had connections to important stuff like Yuji and Tanjiro. Yeah, Yuji was kind of messed up when I think about it. And Tanjiro, arguably passed down. He did not realize it, but was passed down like the one demon slaying style that the Demon King feared, if you will. But let's see. And Space says, even the whole idea that the main character being connected to important characters was never a bad thing, despite what fans tried to argue with Naruto. It's not. I'd say with Naruto, it was. I would say Naruto being the son of the 4th Hokage. I think everyone kind of suspected that. That was fine. Naruto being a part of the Uzumaki clan, okay, that could work, I guess. Though there may be some things that may have wondered, like why this clan wasn't brought up sooner, or like there's sort of semi-Senju clan, if you will. But I think for most people, it was the reincarnations that Naruto being the reincarnation of like the Sage of Six Passes' son. It just, that I think was what for most people ruined it. I think people could have tolerated the 4th Hokage stuff and even the Uzumaki clan stuff, but the moment that he became a reincarnation, I think for that most people, that was just too much.
Good old cycle. No, okay. If we're going to bring up the Naruto thing again, because we always seem to do this anyway, and that wasn't you in this case, this was Space bringing it up, but I mean, okay, so I think it's been beaten to death more times, not just by us, but just the general populace, that yes, part 1 was more grounded, down to earth, made you feel like there was like a form of world building, only for part 2 to then come around and be like, oh, we're going to now make all of this kind of irrelevant. So yes, I mean, yeah, okay, we did it. Naruto kind of was this guy that was supposed to be an underdog, and then ended up being someone that was predestined to be someone special. So good job. You kind of went and unintentionally ruined your own story. So whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, arguably, I think that is why you have many people not liking the reincarnation. Yes, you could say it doesn't benefit Naruto, doesn't damage his character, but I think it depends on who you ask, really. Let's see. I think most people, it's like this was too much, and I definitely say the final power up Naruto got. I think most people would argue at least Naruto sort of worked with or trained for all his other power ups. The last one felt like too much of a freebie. Even Mac didn't like getting Itzy 1-for-all and actually rather him be quirkless hero, which is funny since that was the original My Hero Academia idea. Arguably, yes. Let's see. There is the controversy of Midoriya getting the quirk, that arguably most people like at first, okay, I think most people like, okay, it's only just super strength, and Midoriya has to like there are risks if Midoriya goes all out. So he has to train it piece by piece and get like certain percentage. So that was like fine. Granted, the 6 quirks, some felt like, okay, this is getting a bit too special now, though. I suppose Shonen I think Koei needed to try and just trying to make Midoriya a bit more versatile in his fighting style, I think. Though I will definitely say one thing that I like that the 6 quirks did, what turned out to be, were not quirks that would give Midoriya these super strong powers, but they were more like mostly support quirks, if you will. The only really combat one I would say was like perhaps Black Whip, but the rest would like just gave Midoriya like the ability to fly, do spider sense, and smoke bombs like Batman. So it wasn't like Midoriya got like laser eyes or like ice breath powers, stuff like that. Let's see. Another reason Horikoshi probably had easy to gain extra quirks, so he wasn't a copy of All Might. Arguably, yes. That was just like wouldn't be an exact copy. I mean, granted, some would say though the Kickstar was Midoriya being different, but and I guess let's see. The Black Whip does sort of mesh well with that, but yeah. And arguably, My Hero Academia did go back to its original idea for Midoriya in the end. Granted, let's see, it's just during a time when it no longer matters, though. I do believe there might be another My Hero Academia movie coming out after the worldwide popularity poll, but I haven't really heard anything since that poll happened. So I'm not entirely sure. Because if there is another movie, that could be a good way of exploring what Midoriya's life as a superhero is with just like his mechanical suit. So, but yeah. I definitely say Midoriya was also one thing I think Midoriya was different from most other shonen protagonists is that if you followed most of them, the majority of them ended up being sort of like idiots in one way or another, or a hot-headed character. Midoriya was more of a like was not only sort of like for most part intelligent, maybe not the smartest in the class, but definitely up there. But he also was like he didn't like charge in and go all hot-headed and all that stuff and fights for most part, and mostly had some self-worth issues that he needed to go through.
I will not have you speak ill will of my goat, Ichigo Kurosaki.
Okay, arguably Ichigo was also somewhat intelligent, but there's also times when he acted like an idiot.
That is not true. There is very few times that Ichigo ever like charged in and actually didn't have a form of plan going when he went in.
Okay, fine. I guess.
I'm just saying. I am just saying.
Okay, all right. Your boy is Ichigo, but yeah. Let's see. Izuku giving a 1-4 away and still very controversial today. Arguably,
I don't know if he gave it away, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, arguably sacrificing it to take down, let's see, Shigaraki / All for One was.
That's what happens when you write yourself into a corner.
Arguably, yes, and arguably Lakichi sort of predicted that if, like, for one to go, the other had to go as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But one thing I forgot to mention, I think the anime sort of one impact that it had, at least its most pop culture meme, I would say, is that its soundtrack, if you will. You Say Run, if you will, goes with everything. Is arguably perhaps the thing that My Hero Academia's pop culture wise is probably best known for. Is you've got a lot of these even non-anime stuff use like its theme song.
Yeah. Goes with everything.
Yeah.
You got it with anime, you got it with real life stuff, you got it with the guy next door.
But yeah. Let's see. So but yeah, it's like that is definitely, I'd say, the one part of its legacy and impact that it would probably be remembered for, just for that soundtrack. it would definitely be at least what the anime is best known for. But yeah. Anyway, not really, since Hirokoshi always planned for Izuku to lose one for all. Fair enough, though. I think most fans were thinking that after like the second movie, he might have just scrapped that idea. Heck, I thought Midoriya would probably just at least keep the super strength of one for all. I mean, one for all. I thought he would at least kept the super strength.
There's a reason to think that maybe it would have just rebooted, like restart from zero.
Yeah,
so would have just been a cylindrical, cycle based. Best I can perpetuate. I can't even speak words right now with that. Basically, if it would have just rebooted from the start from ground zero, and then just be a generational pass on thing. That's what I think most people were maybe theorizing. I don't know. I wasn't looking at that many outside sources besides us, so that was the only thing I ever really hypothesized on.
Okay. Anyway, Space is making a comment and saying you say one was used in nearly every episode in season 1, and then it starts slowly being used less and less.
Well, that's because it went to Jet Set Run, which was Deku's version.
Okay. But yeah, I suppose arguably it was used less and less, but arguably I think certain seasons like season 6 and season 7 arguably had moments where you couldn't really use it until like towards the end, especially the final war arc, which arguably I would say one thing I think the anime did, Britzy, was I think towards the end of My Hero Academia, the manga's pacing was kind of a bit of a mess, if you will. Some chapters were only like half a chapter worth of pages, but the anime I think made the pacing a bit more, I think, believable, if you will. In some regards, arguably they were trying to, of course, fit it into like a 25 episode season, but we've got this comment saying, I don't think Izuku would have been able to reset 1-4 because Yorichi's quirk, and no matter what, Yorichi would be there. Fair enough, but yeah. But yeah, we'll get back to that. But yeah, I'll definitely say the later seasons of My Hero Academia, I think, the pacing was starting to get a bit weird. I do think the anime managed to tie in the episodes quite well compared to like some of the manga's pacing. As I think towards the end, you had people saying they just want My Hero Academia to end because Koei's health is clearly being affected with some of the pacing. And I do think sometimes the anime made certain scenes in the manga look a bit more visually clearer just because I think you got color when Koei's sort of manga detail went a bit over the top in some ways. And like, the Fire Animal War is definitely an example of rereading it. It's better than reading it weekly. So, but yeah, I definitely say I enjoyed the Final War a bit better in the anime than the manga. Granted, of course, there's still some criticisms of like nobody dying, and of course there's debates on whether or not Shigaraki or All for One should have been the final villain. But I think overall, I definitely say the anime is probably the better experience for that war arc, I think. I know. Do you agree with that assessment, or do you disagree?
What was the assessment? Sorry.
I think the anime did the war arc better, pacing than the anime did better than the manga.
I mean, isn't it kind of the anime's job to do that sometimes?
Arguably, yes. Arguably, the anime is supposed to faithfully adapt and even sometimes be better than the manga, but
unfortunately, Koei most of the time did 18 pages at max. I mean, there was times where we were counting, it was like 13. Maybe
I think there was one time when it was like 5 or 8 pages.
If that happened, geez. So yeah, I could understand why filling in the gaps in the anime would make it feel a lot better. But I mean, it also just helps that if you can go back and just watch it all in succession, it's going to feel far better than just going back and kind of reading about how things go.
Yeah. So but yeah. The space, the whole no one dying honestly seems a bit a thing for every shonen.
I think any big event tends to be better when it's animated than if you're reading about it.
Arguably, yes, there are some poor adaptations of anime that make it worse. But yeah.
Well, if we're talking about one, then maybe, but because I know everyone likes Dragon Ball Super's Tournament of Power more in the anime than they do in the manga, even though the manga was a little bit more accurate towards a free for all than the anime, where it made it feel like an episodic tournament bracket. But
yeah,
I mean, action's always going to look better in animation than
though
manga paneling.
I do know there's a lot of people, if like the manga and anime for Record of Ragnarok, there's a lot of people that prefer the manga than the anime, as they feel like the animation is poor. And you can argue there's season 3 of One Punch Man. But yeah. As for like the no one dying thing, I think the biggest problem with that is that even though arguably certain arcs don't kill off characters, when they should, there is at least some death in them. For example, Naruto, you did have Shikamaru Ino's parents die in the war. Even Neji, even though we don't really like that death, that was like that. One Piece is a bit of a mix. Sometimes it will kill off characters, mainly in flashbacks, but sometimes it will kill off characters only to find out no, they're alive. But you still do get the occasional character that dies. It's just a very rare thing. And even Bleach's final arc killed off a bunch of characters in the end. So, but yeah, I mean, granted, My Hero did end up killing Stain, but he was like a former villain, really. But there was really no heroes that died towards the end. I mean, the last major hero deaths, if you will, was Midnight. And I guess you could account that Stars and Stripes, but that was an entirely new introduced character. So, My Hero tries to give a reason for the no one dying by stating that the students want a complete victory, not to mention All Might and Endeavor surviving. It's just more fitting. In some ways, arguably, yes. I think, for me, if perhaps maybe Gran Torino had died in the end, I think this one of like... I think most people might have been a bit more accepting, as like Gran Torino fits like the mentor character being killed off. I think that would be like if he had died, I think there would have been a lot less complaints. But yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, there's really no impactful deaths though in any of these most of the time. Bleach didn't really have an impactful, at least not that I can remember.
I'd say the most impactful death people would have for Bleach was Ukiura, and I guess you could argue Yamamoto in the Blood War.
Granted, it was at the start, though. But, I mean, yeah, that makes fair sense. Yamamoto dying kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, but I think it's more of just how brutal his death was that surprised people.
At the hands, yeah.
Yeah. I think if Byakuya did actually die, I think that would have been a death that most people would remember, because it's like he was one of the most iconic side characters from Bleach. But yeah,
I think. Well, the other one that was, because it actually did occur at the time, was Toda. I'm so stuck on one My Hero Academia right now that I'm saying Todoroki, but it's supposed to be the other ice guy that starts with a T for Bleach. He was actually dead for a minute there because he was a zombie, but
yeah,
but they brought him back, so he wasn't.
Yeah, he wasn't dead.
But, yeah. Everyone thought, "Oh wow, that's incredible." Kubo killed him off because he's like a top 5 or at least top 10 character in terms of popularity.
Oh yeah, he was interesting. He was loved by Japan, but hated by the West. But,
I guess he's only hated because he's just your stereotypical loner by shonen guy or whatever.
oh yeah,
Usually like loved by women, hated by men situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and he sort of takes a bit of the spotlight when feel like it doesn't need to. It's like, why is he here? He has no connection to Ichigo, but but the West was more Kenpachi was more popular with the West. But I suppose you could say, lucky for Japan and West fans, Kubo always tried to balance the use of Kenpachi and Hitsugaya.
Right.
But, yeah, we're getting a bit off topic, but yeah.
We'll be talking about death, but yeah, okay. So it's sparked ultimately. So yeah, it does seem to be a thing that death really isn't like we don't kill off like any like super important character.
Oh yeah,
for whatever reason. That's all I was going to get to.
My Hero Academia says it seems very much against the idea of mentors dying. Arguably the opposite of what Naruto did for a time, because it usually would kill off its mentor figure characters like the third Hokage, Lady Chio, Osama, and Jiraiya. Mike Guy probably should have died, but for like Rock Lee, but he didn't. but yeah. And arguably you could say Kakashi, but he came back to life. But yeah. Let's see, with the exception of maybe Night Eye, mental characters didn't really die. Instead of death, the final war decided to give some heroes an end. The hero Endeavor dying, Hawks having his quirk gone, and All for One being destroyed. Edge Shot nearly dying. Arguably, yeah. Let's see. With the exception of maybe Edge Shot nearly dying, I was fine with like those other stuff. But I guess this could be more of an original topic of like should My Hero Academia killed off more characters or something. But Edge Shot is the only one I really have issue with.
Yeah, he survived. He was supposed to die.
Yeah, that is literally the only one I have an issue with. But
I was going to say, I don't think you necessarily need to have like all this death in anything, but I mean, when you're going to make it big on a grand scale, that oh man, there's risk involved, you got to at least kill off some major character. No, Neji does not count as a fucking major character. I don't care. Freaking major character, my bad.
Okay, yeah. In many ways, it feels like Mike Guy should have been the major character that died in the war.
How the hell's he survived too? What the heck, man?
I believe you don't need characters dying for good writing. Arguably, no, but at the very least, when most shonen mangas hype up a war and it's like someone's going, and in many ways, people, when you think of war, you think of death.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like at least one major character should die at least.
Something massive, of course.
Yeah. And I'll say this for Bleach's Blood War, and to some extent, it does do that with the death of Yamamoto at the very least. So,
what I want to know is how did Tsunade survive twice? Twice! She was in a coma after the first one, and then she's having two in the second one. How do you survive twice?
Yeah, and arguably Jujutsu Kaisen killed off, arguably had perhaps the most major.
That was probably the best.
Yeah, in recent years, even though I'm not sure if the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen can count as a walk and more of your just standard final battle.
Right. But still, that was actually something no one would have ever anticipated. Congrats to that one, I guess.
Yeah. Unfortunately, every shonen doesn't have that many deaths in final arcs.
I mean, I would have hated it, but if Kishimoto just stuck to it, Kakashi dying in the pain arc would have been very impactful.
Yeah. I mean, and you could have brought him back as an Edo Tensei anyway, but...
yeah. That would have been actually kind of cool to think about.
But yeah.
Having Team 7 version.
Yeah. Or him like breaking free and then helping Team 7 until like the end and then seeing them reunite. He finally can pass on to the afterlife.
Yeah, with the rest of his team.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, with the whole Tsunade surviving thing. It's like, oh, well, Jiraiya or Orochimaru are dead, and then, oh, well, never mind. Orochimaru is actually alive.
Oh yeah.
So Jiraiya is the only one that got screwed.
He's going. And what JJ Ken did anything special? Namely, dying is just the mentor dying. Are you up to date with like the final mangas arc? I'm just curious. Some space. Are you up to date?
I'm gonna say no at that point because I don't know how you don't know who's dead now.
Yeah, because it was like the one death that was literally spoiled on social media.
Everyone thought it was fake. They thought he'd come back.
Yeah. See, but yeah, Shinjaku didn't have that many deaths. Too, yeah, but yeah, arguably didn't. But it had that one death that just basically exploded on the internet. So much that you had that one death that one death had one mangaka take a hiatus because let's see, she was shocked by the impact of the death. I'm not spoiling it for anyone that hasn't watched JJK and somehow managed to avoid that spoiler. Because even though I basically got spoiled and I wasn't reading JJK at the time, but it's like there's that one death in JJK that everyone remembers.
Okay, you don't have to say he was a mentor. I mean, he was, but you don't have to say. You could argue anything like that, but. Now that I think about it, I think Yu Yu Hakusho is like one of the only ones that didn't really have any major death other than Genkai.
Oh yeah, and she was brought back.
Yeah, she was. That's right.
In some ways, let's see, My Hero Academia sort of returned to what Yu Yu Hakusho was, but yeah.
Hey man, Yu Yu Hakusho is great.
Oh yeah. Here's a topic: how does My Hero deal with its side characters? Arguably, one thing I think I think one thing that probably draw anime attention to the anime cast is that many felt like the side characters and many of the previous shonen didn't feel like they got treated well. But My Hero Academia, for the most part, I think most people said like, okay, they were for the most part treated well. Though I think there was like the controversy of like eventually Bakugo, Shoto, and Midoriya always hogging the spotlight, But yeah, here's a topic: how does My Hero deal with its side characters? But yeah, arguably, I'd say for the most part it handled it well, and it always felt like Class 1A was sort of like important, even though I'd say you had certain members felt more important than others, particularly that trio, as Edith kind of felt like he was put to the sidelines a bit, except for like supporting mostly Shoto. Of course, Uraraka got her moment with like Kimiko, and I think one thing that I'll give props to My Hero Academia with its like both in anime and manga is that it did build up to like having a final villain for Uraraka to fight, which unfortunately Naruto never really did for Sakura. Let's see. The Suku Bakugo Shoto trio wasn't really a thing aside from the Endeavor Agency, and Ochako and Ida stayed important alongside them. Arguably, yes. I think you could argue that, but I definitely think there's a period where, particularly with the third movie, which I argue we could say it's another damaging impact on the third movie, is the fact that those three were sort of spot and center. And it just made everyone feel like, oh, it's always those three. Heck, the final battle in the fourth movie is those three versus Dark Might. So, but yeah.
Yep.
So, but yeah. So I definitely say, let's see, there's some both good and bad, but I definitely say the side characters for My Hero, for the most part, are handled well. Arguably better than the K11, which most of them, the only reason some of them, arguably, I'd say, got any attention or popularity, particularly Hinato's, because they had a lot of filler arcs that were focused on them. Because if manga wise, they're only like major for like the two arcs in part one, the Chunin exams, of course, / Forest of Death, and the Sasuke retrieval arc. And the only one that's became important for like the rest of like part two, if you will, was Shikamaru and Team 10, with like Shikamaru getting his own arc, and then Team 10 getting a bit of spotlight in the fourth Great Ninja War. So,
yeah.
let's see. I think My Academia dealt with its side characters better than Naruto did, at the very least.
Some of them, anyway.
Yeah.
There's still obviously other side characters in this series that still did, nothing.
Arguably, yes, but I think let's see. At least it felt like Class A felt more like a group that was connected, particularly with Midoriya, than the K11 were with Naruto. I definitely say, I believe more. There's definitely more bonds with the Class 1A, I believe, more than like Naruto with some members of the K11.
There was more of a family there. I mean, they did, room and board, so I guess that makes sense. They were living together for a while.
And
so they became their own family.
And it also, I think, made it believable, I think, for Midoriya versus Class 1A, with everyone having one reason or another for wanting Midoriya that was connected to Midoriya, if you will.
Right. Had their moments. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, if we're talking about like how Shonen typically doesn't care about side characters too much, sure, then My Hero Academia had some things that certain side characters did get to have their time in the sun comparably. But if we're just considering side characters, then, side characters are side characters for a reason. We're not really supposed to care too much about them.
Yeah. I will say I do think Koei has done a better job than most other ones because even though he introduced perhaps maybe too many side characters and he attended than some other manga, heck, the only one I'd say handles side characters better is probably Black Clover, ironically enough. I think it does well with its side cast.
I was going to say, it did seem like, even though I never really read it outright, I mean, every time I saw people talk about it, it did seem like their lesser characters were doing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Arguably, you could also say One Piece. I think the Straw Hats, there were certain arcs in the post time skip where they felt neglected, but yeah. But My Hero Academia almost has every side character have moments, even the civilians. True, arguably. That is true. So props to My Hero Academia for that. So I definitely say the world of My Hero Academia is definitely one thing. I definitely say it also had a bit of an impact is due to the fact that nearly anyone in the world, minus 20% of the world, could have a quirk. And he also had like a hero school thing. In some ways, it sort of got like the Harry Potter effect where you could self-insert yourself, which and arguably, My Hero Academia is probably less problematic than, I guess, Harry Potter these days, just because the author for Harry Potter can't stop Gritzy doing controversy with like certain groups. But I'm not going to go into that. But yeah. So I think you have that. So I definitely think there's also like the one thing that appeals with My Hero Academia's appeal is that it's quite the perfect of like the self-insert, and arguably the villains are probably another thing. Interestingly, My Hero Academia was well, granted, I think it may have botched the sort of villain arc, if you will, for season 5 in some regards, swapping around with the Endeavor Agency arc. It is one of the first shonen I know where it did an arc that was focused entirely on the villains. Arguably, you could count. Some might say, Katsuki and I guess Taka took the center stage in the Kage Summit arc, but if you will, as like and Danzo was the antagonist, I guess, and to some extent maybe the Kages, at least in terms against Sasuke. But yeah, but I would definitely say My Hero Academia did like its first original like one arc that would focus on the villains.
Yeah.
What? Any comment? Sorry.
For the villain arcs. I mean, I don't know. That was actually a fairly memorable, enjoyable. What would you want to say? I guess technically a side story, pushing off the hero cast to the side for that moment. It did make me. I don't know if the whole idea was to make me feel sympathetic for them, or at least understand what they were doing. But I guess it was cool to see Shigaraki kind of come to a resolve as to why he's kind of a scummy person, I guess.
Oh yeah, yeah. You've basically kind of got Tomura's origin story of that, which Space
Right.
says Tomura's a little different by having him grow alongside the main character. Arguably, that is probably one of the things that are notable of My Hero Academia, where Tomura you see grew and developed alongside Midoriya as he was sort of like a bratty gamer at the beginning, but as he started making more decisions, he started becoming more of a villain that would eventually become Midoriya's arch rival. The only other comparison I could make is Luffy and Blackbeard in One Piece, where Blackbeard is sort of rising with power, but and sort of like at the same time, Luffy is, though he gets a bit ahead sometimes. Heck, he became a Yonko before Luffy did, but I think Blackbeard is more of a contrast to like with Luffy, where Luffy's like with his willpower and Ritzy not doing the easy way, while Blackbeard is more of like a villain that cheats and will try and make sure the situation is to his advantage. Arguably, Blackbeard being more of your standard pirate, what you think, and Luffy being more of like a child's idea of a pirate adventure, if you will. But arguably, yes. Shigaraki was arguably like a villain that grew alongside Midoriya. Granted, I would definitely say, as a result, due to that, the first season, I think there was some criticism that the villains didn't feel that impactful in the first season. And it's not until season 2 where you got the introduction of Stain and his ideology that villains started becoming a bit more interesting in My Hero Academia. I'll definitely give this credit to My Hero Academia in terms of the villains. Granted, this could be in a whole other topic or stream, but for most of the UA characters, like main cast, you had storylines with the villains that would be built up throughout multiple seasons and storylines, if you will, like Darby and Shoto with the whole Todoroki family drama with Endeavor. And Uraka would have like a personal like antagonism with Toka, mix of like both having a thing for Midoriya and both trying to like understand each other down the line when they sort of countered. Granted, that one takes a bit more longer to do, and Toga arguably gets a bit more than Uraka sometimes feels like at times with like well, definitely the the overhaul arc where Toga ended up having a bit of a fight against Midoriya and let's see Ayazawa, if you will, and end up fighting like that one Meta Liberation villain, if you will. So
Yep.
in some ways, Toga feels like she got more spotlight in Uraka to some extent, but it's just like her moments were a little bit more. And also, Toma grew a bond with his crew that became an important part of his character. Arguably, yes, friendships, and arguably, I think we did mention there was the lack of death from My Hero Academia. One thing I'll give it credit is that Twice's death did felt like the saddest death in the series. You kind of feel bad for Twice.
Oops.
Let's see, which is a bit of I think most people would not really feel like. Most villains, you don't really feel bad for when they die. In fact, you might even find a bit of a triumph that they've been defeated or destroyed, but Twice is arguably one of the villains whose deaths you kind of feel sad for.
There was some impact behind it, yeah.
Yeah. So arguably, let's see. Now, villain deaths, arguably, that's what you expect in most shonen anyway. But I definitely said My Hero Academia had definitely some of the more impactful villain deaths. at least with twice, maybe Toga, and maybe I guess you could count Derby's slow death. So I definitely think there was that, but yeah, but I definitely say for the first season, it didn't feel like the villains stand out too much. Maybe except for like that one All Might versus Nomu fight, but that's more of like for like All Might's character of like showing how he's still pushing his limits even when he's given it transferred his quirk and it's like got the embers left. And then of course against All for One in season 3. There of course there was the controversy of like, I guess, let's see, should Shigaraki be the final villain or should All for One be? With some feeling like let's see, All for One was too much of your standard plain Dark Lord type villain that didn't have wasn't as interesting as like Toga or Shigaraki. But at the very least, I'd say with All for One, at least he was sort of built up for long alongside the series, alongside Shigaraki, if you will. Compared to say like with Naruto, where you had like Madara, who felt like the villain that was built up and then only to be replaced by Kaguya, but that's like an entirely different stream,
right?
So yeah, I mean, I will admit when I was a little disappointed that Shigaraki wasn't the final villain, like the way All for One took over, but I will admit I think I think I've gone over that over time, and at least with like All for One, I think it makes sense. We'll see, even if like even if like you could argue Shigaraki was the more better villain. Shigaraki is the main villain, All for One is the final enemy. That's how I view it. Arguably, you could see it that way. And in some ways, that could work in some regards, but yeah. But yeah, I definitely at the very least say it's the My Hero Academia handled its villains much better than final villains much better than Naruto did at the very least. But I think it's the though. Granted, I think you still for a time have Shigaraki novel One for All. Sort of like that debate will probably go on for a while. Anyway, I suppose would you like to now talk about the final episode, the special bonus episode, the one of chapter 431, if you will, Mangareader, because you did watch that episode before we start, right?
You make it sound like you didn't watch it just before we started either.
I did.
I know, but
I did. Yeah, see,
clearly because it came out today. So,
so in many ways, this stream was kind of fitting for this.
That's because you wanted it to be this. I mean, if you want to talk about it, it's no different than the final chapter. It just adds a couple things, but
yeah. Arguably, it was a nice little send off, if you will, like one last bit of story, if you will, and giving you an update of like Class 1A where they rank as heroes, and of course, finally doing like the Midoriya and Uraraka getting together, which let's see, I think when the ending first came out, some were disappointed they didn't do that, but then that bonus chapter came out, and then it's like, yes, it's finally happened. Of course, like those who wanted Midoriya and Bakugo, but let's be honest, that was never going to happen, and arguably My Hero Academia could have its own stream about shipping, which
it could do its own thing. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, with 431 being like the sort of DLC, if you want to use it, so 430 still being the ending. Arguably, yes. 431 is arguably more of a bonus content. But I'll definitely say, in terms of bonus content, I definitely prefer it over like the bonus content with Naruto, because Naruto sort of like ended and you needed all this bonus content just to explain how we got there. With like the last being like the biggest example, and a space, let's see, no, and a space like agrees with us. That movie was absolute garbage with how it did that stuff. At the very least, I'd rather have something like 431 or the special My Hero Academia, let's see, special episode than what the last did. So at the very least, so I definitely say Midoriya and Mitsuki Uraraka
Of course.
together was much better than what Naruto did. And I think people, and even though I think some might criticize that Midoriya and Uraraka didn't kiss, I think the hand holding with like Ritzy is like symbolic more of like yeah, they're together, and fitting with more of like Korei's obsession with hands, if you will.
All hands on deck. Yeah.
So yeah. Now, arguably, of course, My Hero Academia has ended. The animated special episode. The only thing really could do is maybe that other like extra one where you see like areas like starting like as doing like in school and being a sort of like hero career and learning that Midoriya's where Midoriya now ranks in the hero world, and finding out that All Might has become vice principal. But I don't know. I don't think they maybe could do something with that, but it's a very short bonus chapter. But so I don't know if they're going to do like a full special episode, if you will. But at the very least, let's see. But like I was sort of saying, we've got Steve saying some say LKMHJ, aka Steve, says some say on cold nights you can still hear Bakugo shippers moaning. He's supposed to be gay. And all that.
Steve's here now.
Meanwhile, all the weebs listen to the Fujiyasha and Fundiyasha moan off dance, and isn't he supposed to have a gay? Steve, would you like to join us? I mean, I can send you the link if you will.
For the last 10 minutes? I mean, he can. I don't really care. But
you can still have Bakugo be gay. Kirishima Red Riot right there.
Yeah.
No,
guys, the Red Riot people seem to have this thing for Mina being his main squeeze. Although I was surprised that I don't know if they said it in the chapter itself, but they did at least in the episode shut down the Jiro X Genki.
Yeah. Though, see, arguably, so I was like, oh no, we're just convenient that we just both ended up being next to each other.
Right.
That one, that one will be a remainder of headcanon, if you will. You could say that arguably there's things that can imply it, but things that doesn't. But
yeah. They could have just been hiding it, but yeah. I mean, I don't know why they would hide it, but then you got people that are saying that Ida and Mai Hatsume are together or something. You got that floating around.
Yeah. Wait, which one did you say?
I said Ida. Ida.
Ida
Enjunum and Mai Hatsume.
Enjunum.
Girl? What?
Are you talking about the Invisible Girl?
No, Mai, as in the gadget girl.
The gadget.
Mai Hatsume. Yeah.
Oh, Eden the gadget girl.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
People that are trying to make that a thing on the internet, even though there's no confirmation of that either.
Oh yeah, I think the reason why Red Riot and Mina, I guess you could say, ship because it's revealed that they were both went to the same school.
Yeah, they were friends at the time, or at least childhood people that have. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Space says the fact that 431 even mentioned Denju and Deki and Jinro probably means that it got to be a popular ship in Japan or something. Arguably, it drew enough attention, and I think there was like this one episode chapter in the first war arc that implied that Denki cared about Jiro or something. But yeah, in his moment. And Steve says can't join, unfortunately, too busy with making sure my trip.
Oh, he's going to Japan.
Oh yeah, lucky son of a gun.
Lucky him.
But yeah, arguably, at the very least, the one thing of the bonus chapter, it does confirm a few ships and maybe tease certain others at least. But yeah, but of course, My Hero Academia deserves its own stream for ships. Maybe we'll do it for next year's Valentine's, or maybe down the line, or maybe at the very least once after Lucky Rave, and we can review chapter 431, and then afterwards maybe do a stream about ships. Let's see.
He's not here to tell you to correct you. You keep calling him she.
Yeah. Be sure to check out Animanga Discord in the next couple of weeks. Okay, fair enough. And also, I guess, check out Animanga YouTube channel. Let's see with some videos for those who are watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's where you can see the times when we discussed Naruto back when Naruto was ongoing, and even some streams now. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, definitely going to say this. My Hero Academia 30 made damage of Joker and Izuku, but somehow provide every straight Izuku ship. Yeah.
Those pictures. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it wasn't like since it didn't look like it was implied to have happened in canon. It's like it could have been open for like you could have Midoriya go with like every other ship he could, but no, 431 has basically said no, those two get together.
Well, I think he had to comment out because otherwise there was just nothing really there, and it would have been one of those "why did you even set it up" moments.
Oh yeah, but yeah. But anyway, My Hero Academia, of course. It's anime, of course. The special has now, I guess you could argue, has technically ended, but at the very least, My Hero Academia still got some things going for it right now. For example, the spin-off series My Hero Academia Vigilantes, which was a sort of spin-off / prequel to like My Hero Academia, focusing on like these group of, let's see, vigilante characters. One particularly wanted to be a hero, and one was an ex-hero, and one was just a pop idol, if you will, dealing with local villains, if you will. We got an anime last year, just around the same time, let's see, the anime finished, if you will. So allowed it to continue, though granted, with the way the anime is going, it's producing like I think 12 episodes a season. I think next year will be, of course, the third and final season of this. But at the very least, you had something in the world of My Hero Academia for a while. So at the very least, it seems to be one spin-off that seems to be, for the most part, moderately successful. At the very least, you got people talking. I think with Knuckle Duster being like regarded as like the Batman for My Hero Academia, but yeah, of course, even though that might be ending soon, there is, of course, the My Hero Academia Smash parody manga, which could potentially become an anime, if you will. I mean, the Rock Lee got his Ninja Pals one, so let's see, yeah, with Space saying Vigilante saying even impacted the main series with the revival of a character, Blue Cows and Purple Mist. Oh yeah. Arguably one of the villains that was like a major character in the first saga of My Hero Academia and then came back for the second one. Had a personal close relationship with Arazara, and the one thing I'd say with Vigilantes is the one reason to watch is that you do have 3 episodes in season 2 that explore, I think, Ayazara's like time at UA. So those episodes at the very least are worth watching. Even if you don't watch the full-on Vigilantes, if you just want to have more of a understand who this character meant for Azar when you find out that he is like let's see, Nomu, I think it is, or Nemu, was it? Well, the sort of like basically the teleporting guy for the villains, if you will. but yeah. Now, like I said, Smash could potentially be a Rock Lee parody, if you will. Let's see, they could do that, but of course, another manga that could be adapted is the Team Up missions, in which there's about 8 volumes worth of chapters, if you will, and a total of like 52, if you will, 52 plus chapters, where you could do like Kurogiri, yeah, that's the one. If you want to see like the Ayazawa Kurogiri have more emotional impact with that, you could see it there. But Team Up could be a way for the My Hero Academia anime to continue, if you will, with like just adapting all these sort of ones, if you will, if Bones wanted to do that. Let's see. If Smash is kind of more risky since the jokes are more crazy, arguably, yes. I mean, I haven't really fully read Smash, but arguably it could potentially, but who knows? it depends if they want to do a Rock Lee spin-off, what Rock Lee parody thing, but if they wanted to, but I do feel like maybe they would do team-ups just because you can like see some like certain characters interact that you wouldn't see in like in the manga, like certain classes teaming up, if you will. Heck, you even got like certain movie characters interacting with some of the characters in the manga from what I can remember. I haven't really fully read Team Ups, but I do have the majority of its volumes, so that could be the way. But yeah. So, but yeah, while My Hero Academia's anime is ending, I do think down the line, it's in some ways, My Hero Academia is one of those animes that sort of like a blend of, let's see, the length of the big three, but minus the sort of like anime filler, and also having at least a decent amount of length, because like some of the more modern anime take years to come out, and and they don't have as many chapters to adapt as My Hero Academia do. So if you want like a decently long series, I think My Hero Academia would be the one that people will check out, if you will. I don't know what you think.
I mean, of course, they'll check out. Well, yeah, because Vigilantes has its own anime. The other two don't. I mean, Missions, at least from the very limited time I actually looked at that spinoff, could have been interesting if they adapted that into an anime.
Mm-hmm.
The Everyone Mission or whatever, but I don't know. It's probably just Vigilante. I mean, again, it's been the more prominent. You can sometimes even log on to Crunchyroll, and it's right there in the front.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, it seems like Naruto and One Piece still probably remain juggernauts, at least in terms of anime, at least, because you've got on Twitter One Piece fans and
One Piece is going to be major anyway because it's just ongoing.
Yeah, arguably that, but you've got like Naruto and One Piece fans debating on Twitter at the very least of like what one's more viewed, because One Piece is the most watched anime on Netflix, but Naruto's close behind despite ending for like such a long time ago. So arguably Naruto, despite having a very bad ending, still has like a bit of a sizable fan base. So I still think it's no longer its peak, but
I see a lot of One Piece fans fight with Dragon Ball fans, but yeah, I definitely say My Hero Academia may not be regarded as like as big as the big three. I think that it's done enough to like keep its attention a bit. And what Space says here, I'm going to say this: I don't believe My Hero Academia needs a sequel. I think its ending is good enough to stand on its own. Arguably, most manga probably didn't need sequels, but they got forced into them. I think Naruto, kind of got forced to continue with Boruto, if you will. As a result, I think its ending was greatly affected by that. But that's the debate for another stream. But I definitely say My Hero Academia, for the most part, yeah, it's done what it needs to do with its main series. I think most people are satisfied with what it did. I mean, maybe some are debating like whether or not All for One should have been or Shigaraki should have been the final villain, or if Deku should have not lost One for All. But I think most people are satisfied. In terms of like, it could still maybe adapt some to team up missions, or maybe some of the novels that My Hero Academia has. But outside of that, I don't think the only thing you could really do, I think there might be a movie. They might do another movie. The only thing I can think of doing is maybe revealing what Midoriya's dad actually looks like. That's like literally the only thing I think you could do for a My Hero story. But even then, that feels more like a one-shot thing, not like its own continuing sequel. And right.
And it's like, buddy, Naruto hasn't even got those 4 episodes. Meanwhile, all this stuff happened. Yeah. Let's see. My Hero Academia gets its special episode, and in the sort of podcast I was in about Boruto's anniversary, one of the things that those guys were complaining about is like, wait, Naruto still can't get those 4 episodes teased for its 20th anniversary for the anime, and yet One Piece is getting like a live action remake. Bleach is continuing the Blood War, all that stuff, but no 4 episodes, even though I think those 4 episodes probably wouldn't live up to any hype since they're just, I think, an original story of Naruto leading Team 7 for the first time.
Yeah.
Which you can expect will probably be disaster because Naruto, especially in early part 1, would not be fitted to lead any team. But yeah. But at the very low, I think with My Hero Academia, while it might not be, let's say, maybe as iconic as, say, Dragon Ball, One Piece, and to some extent Naruto, or even Attack on Titan in some ways. Though, granted, Attack on Titan's had a very controversial ending, of course. So, but I definitely say its anime has, I think it's done enough to, like, as enough content that it would drive people in to take a look, as well as, but not be like, also, let's mention that mini crossover My Hero had with Deadpool manga. Oh yeah, where All Might appeared in. Now, whether or not Deadpool will ever get that manga will get an anime adaptation, I don't know. But at the very least, I'd definitely say I think My Hero Academia's got at least a very decent B or A tier sort of like anime. May not be one with like the high quality animation that you get in like JJK and Demon Slayer, but I think it's definitely one of the most accessible ones you can watch. It's not got the long lengths of Naruto or One Piece, and it's got like a decent amount of seasons that you can invest in that might take a while, but at the very least you won't take forever, and you've got a bit more content than some of like the other of its like fellow ones. And not to mention comic artists and Hirokoshi have drawn stuff for each other. Yes, I mentioned that I have here. Naruto and TNT having a crossover, Pokemon My Hero crossover with series, arguably X-Men. So arguably you probably might get a few crossovers and things like that, but I definitely say My Hero Academia, one thing that also will appeal is, as it's being a world of superheroes and, well, Marvel and DC, I definitely say the biggest one problem you could say is that since they must always go on forever, they won't get like proper conclusions. At the very least, with My Hero Academia, you got like a you got like a proper conclusion for its hero story. But yeah, I don't know. Do you want to have any final thoughts, Ritzy, about My Hero Academia's impact and legacy on like anime and manga, and I guess, or just general?
Okay, well, impact. I don't know. I mean, it's just another shonen series, so it'll leave its mark because it had just mainly from its starting standpoint, you don't really see too many mangas that tried to go based on American-based comics. So it is kind of cool in that respect. I don't know I mean, it didn't have the highest point of longevity. It only made, 42 volumes. I don't know if that was Koei's decision or if that's just where they decided, you know what, we're going to end it at this, so to speak. It could have probably got to 500 if it really wanted to.
Yeah, though, arguably, yeah. Though interesting, I believe Dragon Ball has about 42 volumes in total. Though granted, Super has probably increased that number. But yeah, go on.
We'll keep that going. But Dragon Ball's impactful because it wasn't really a story based. The original one was, and everyone liked it. Or but I hope everyone liked the original Dragon Ball. But but when it went on to its more iconic, I guess, it wasn't really. It was never Z, but Z for the anime. Yeah, I mean, its biggest thing was, I mean, manga-wise, Toriyama was great at paneling. anime wise, it's just there because it was, fighting, and every kid growing up seemed to enjoy that type of thrilling, flashy, big battle um, sequence. Kind of why I got into it, but yeah, for My Hero, it takes inspiration from Naruto in the sense, so it's kind of it'll have its fans from the Naruto fan base a little bit, even if they won't ever like truly admit it.
Yeah, arguably, I definitely say My Hero Academia has given, let's see, those who like Naruto that did not like its ending a manga series that, let's see, that did follow it, but do seem to like the ending of My Hero Academia at the very least.
Well, yeah. I don't have any concrete proof to back that up, but we can at least say that we like the ending. I don't know. I was kind of still bittersweet to the ending, but it still accomplished more than what it set out to do. So I'm not disappointed in the ending.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, I don't know what's going to replace it. Obviously, something had to have replaced it by now.
Yeah. I do think I think there was a few assistants of Tsuyokari that tried to do their own manga, but I don't think they have been as successful as My Hero just yet.
I just don't know what took its place in shonen at this point. This is kind of like the very last big shonen that I could argue was new at the time that I got into.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what new shonen there is at this point that I've even been relatively interested in. Just a lot of non-shonen based things I've been kind of keeping up with, I guess, a little bit here and there. But yeah, if it goes to shonen, I'm usually just rewatching stuff that I already liked back in the day.
Let's see. I think in terms of like shonen, let's see, the ones that have like come afterwards would be the next era of like
What's the new era? Yeah.
Let's see,
is it that sword guy? Is that sword manga?
Yeah, I think Kurabachi or something. I think its name is
something like a spirit caller or something like that.
Yeah. I think there's also Dan, and
okay, I'll be man. I am up with Dan. Okay, so there's that one. I didn't know that was. I should have known that it was shonen, but I didn't. But that's my fault. That's my fault. Yeah, I like Dan. That's actually a pretty good series.
Yeah.
I like sci-fi. That one might even be a little more memorable to me, just because again, there's not a lot of series that go with the whole sci-fi mystery type genre. So that one's actually kind of cool for that. But for My Hero Academia, anyway, the impact's still going to be there. If the movie that you said may or may not come out, people still go watch it.
Oh yeah. Also, I think one thing that Space has made a comment is also comics are now trying to go back to Hope Era, for example, the recent Superman film, and arguably the Fantastic Four movie, and trying to move away from some of the darker stuff. So yeah, arguably My Hero Academia isn't it, for the most part, an optimistic series. I definitely think, even though there was probably some that felt like it was too optimistic compared to like some of the more depressing stuff that you got with like let's see, like JJK, Chainsaw Man, I guess, particularly Chainsaw Man, I think, for example, the main character.
I do kind of keep up with that a little bit, but not too much. But yeah, I know what you mean for that. Yes.
But yeah, but since My Hero Academia is quite an optimistic series, I definitely say it'll have appeal for like those who just want to have something fun, especially like. Particularly All Might, I think we mentioned earlier, is like a lighthearted, as Space mentioned earlier, it's a lighthearted Superman that actually feels more like a Betsy proper Superman, Betsy parody, Betsy homage compared to like say Homelander, Omni-Man, and all that stuff. But yeah, I definitely think And people enjoy, if like you want more like that with Superman, you probably definitely get that with All Might. Even though arguably All Might shows up here and then, who knows? Let's say you get an All Might prequel. That might be one thing that there might be in the future, but who knows? But but it might be that All Might is just too strong. That'd be that at best maybe a mini series or even one shot like they did with Minato. And one impact is Mahito was inspired by Tomura. Arguably, yes, and which is why you have a death battle between those two characters. Which I'm not going to spoil who wins, but I think if you paid attention to My Hero Academia in the stream, I think you can get an idea. But yeah, and one thing he says that I think that benefits My Hero Academia's ending compared to Naruto's, as a space says. Unlike Naruto, My Hero Academia feels like it helps society. Meanwhile, Naruto is a mess. But arguably, yeah, one thing that My Hero Academia's ending has, it's one of those shonen mangas that feels like it at least did somewhat change, or society got better. Because I definitely say this is one criticism I say with most shonen is that they introduce their world, they introduce problems with like Betsy that have impacted the world. So society, a bunch of rules and traditions that feel like that has made things worse for it there. Naruto, of course, you have like the ninja system, let's see, child soldiers, if you will, Danzo with whatever his behind the scene things, like the elders still being corrupt council elders in both the Sand and Leaf. And while I think a novel in the Sand had go remove all the problematic ones, in Naruto you still have those same, Kahona elders that have been there since the beginning, who arguably should have been dismissed a long time ago, especially when you learn that they also were partly responsible for the Uchiha clan massacre, siding more with Danzo in the third Hokage. So it definitely feels like My Hero Academia at least tried to address the problems. Naruto feels like he's neglected them. Heck, this is, I think, one of the criticisms is also like, did the Hyuga plotline ever be sorted out properly? But yeah, so I definitely say My Hero Academia at least has a more, with its ending, at least feels like it did stuff to like change its world for the better, and arguably doesn't really need like a sequel series unless I know you wanted to do just maybe see Midoriya's life as a hero, but that's like a movie that they may do or not. But yeah. So yeah. Any final thoughts, Mangareader? Because I'm about ready to wrap this up.
Final thoughts for what? I mean, I was kind of just giving my final thoughts right there.
Oh yeah, sorry, but yeah.
More to add my final thoughts on top of my final thoughts. But,
okay. No, I think, yeah.
No. You don't get to do that to me. Don't be all discouraged because I'm pointing it out. Basically, I mean, you go to any anime convention, you'll still see My Hero people. So yes, it'll leave a lasting impact for at least another couple years until the next big thing comes, and then it's just deteriorate, and then you'll probably just, I don't know what it was about Naruto and Dragon Ball. I mean, One Piece, even some ways or shape, form, but those three things just kind of clicked with everyone, and they're just kind of stuck now for how much people left their impressions on them. Even Bleach in a form has a little bit, but Bleach kind of got like the short stick, and part of that I'm curious is if it was the anime ended before the book itself, or well, Kubo even finished the series, but I wonder, I really think deep down that what really makes a big impact on an anime is how well on a manga series is how well the anime is. So,
yeah. Now, of course, Naruto.
Good for Bones.
Yeah. Arguably, I would definitely say, well, I would say for Naruto, its reputation and legacy is kind of mixed in some regards because
Whatever.
it certainly was controversial to some extent, and it's also got a very many people think outside of maybe more newer fans, particularly among old school ones, think that Boruto is a terrible sequel or legacy thing.
Well, we don't count Boruto anyway to begin with, but yes.
Yeah, but yeah. But I definitely say My Hero Academia at the very least will be at least perhaps. I think some will be thankful doesn't really have a spin-off that ruins its legacy at the very least. But yeah, so like Space Sense, I guess you could say a final score on My Hero Academia. For like the manga, I definitely say it's a decent B tier series. The anime, I definitely would probably maybe give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10 in total. Maybe also B a tier, maybe an A if you wanted to be nice, but I don't know. How about you?
I mean, yeah. Well, I guess you can say your final score. Oh, my final score overall. I don't know. I feel like 9 out of 10 is too generous, but 8's too small. So I'm just gonna say 8.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Space is giving like an 8 out of 10. So yeah, I think it's around the 8 to 8.5.
I don't think there's ever going to be a true 10 out of 10 outside of nostalgic blinders. Like maybe in 20 years, if you ask me, it'll be like compared to what it is now. Like, oh yeah, that was a 10 out of 10 series.
The only 10 out of 10 series I probably would do is maybe Full Metal Alchemist. But
yeah, there are people that say that. I don't know. Maybe for me, I wouldn't even say Dragon Ball. I don't know. Yu Yu Hakusho was up there. I mean, it helps that Hunter x Hunter is the guy that was doing it, but yeah, that would probably be my closest series, but yeah, 8.5 sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah,
maybe on the high end 8.8, but it was a good one. I mean, it's something that if I really wanted to, I could go back and reread. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Or rewatch.
Yeah. But yeah, let's see. I guess some might say Code Geass is a 10 out of 10 anime, but yeah. Anyway. But yeah. Anyway, I think we've basically wrapped up. We've arguably talked about the anime quite a bit. Maybe some stuff about the series in general, and maybe got sidetracked with some other stuff going along. But I think we've done what we all needed to see for now. Mangareader, thank you for joining me with this stream. It was nice discussing My Hero Academia again with you. Granted, I will admit, I figured my first My Hero Academia discussion would have been about Endeavor, but of course, we're still waiting for Lucky to come back for that.
Yeah.
And of course, we still need to discuss 431 in detail. But of course, like I said, I want Lucky to be back for that. But at the very least, at least we got to talk about it a little bit today. But yeah. But I'm Blue Star Saber.
I'm Mangareader.
And we are signing off. Thank you, Space, for your comments, as well as Elkame Yates, aka Steve, and I think that one other person who only did one comment. I hope you all enjoyed listening to what we had to say, and we'll see you next time. Plus Ultra.
Plus Ultra.